As one of the original members of the Not Ready for Primetime Players on Saturday Night Live, she redefined the way women were seen in comedy and brought a touch of class to that notorious show. She stayed in television and continued to have success, from Kate and Allie to Third Rock from the Sun. She's also been involved as an ambassador for UNICEF. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on this episode of InnerVIEWS, our conversation with Emmy Award winner Jane Curtin. Do you find that you approach dramatic roles differently than comedic roles?
No, I don't think so. Basically, what I do is I read a script and get the rhythm of it, and I can generally, the first time through, figure out who the person is that I'm playing, and whether it's dramatic or whether it's comedy, it's basically who are you in this particular situation and how do you function within the script.
Right.
So it's the same for both. With comedy, it's just the rhythm is a little more obvious.
Then was I misunderstanding when I read back that you left college because you wanted to go into comedy, or did you just want to be an actress?
I just wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
I ended up doing comedy because I got a job in an improv group, and it had to be funny. Otherwise, people wouldn't come, and it would have been lonely. So it was funny, and it was topical and satirical, and it came out of the Boston college community, and we had our own little theater in Cambridge, and it was just adorable, and we were paid $40 a week, and it was a great training ground, and because I hadn't really done that much theater. I did summer stock the summer before, and that was really my introduction to actually performing on stage. I'd seen a lot of theater, but the thought of actually getting up on stage, it was a fantasy, but I never thought I would actually do it.
But then you wrote a play, too.
Well, it was a review. So it was sketches and songs, and it was cute.
Yeah.
But very light and inconsequential.
But
it did run a while, so.
Did you have any idea when you signed on to work with Saturday Night Live that it would become what it became?
No. And it was interesting because at the same time that our Saturday night was happening, there was the Howard Cosell Saturday Night Live, which I was also up for. And that was prime time. That was everybody was saying, do that one, it's prime time, do that one, it's great. And I said, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know. And it seemed as though, because Saturday Night Live didn't know what it was, that it would be a better place to come in on the bottom, to come in at the beginning and be a part of the evolution of that show. Whereas the Howard Cosell show was pretty set in its ways. It was a typical variety show with an atypical host, but, it had the form there, and it was pretty... You knew exactly what it was going to be, but with Saturday Night Live, there was possibilities of other things going on.
Is there any of that left in television today, though?
No. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, you have sections of... You have Mad TV, which does sketches. You have Jon Stewart and The Daily Show, and Stephen Colbert, which is the news. And I don't know anybody who's doing that kind of music anymore, but I could just be out of the loop. I don't know.
But I wonder if somebody came along today and said, let's do a show like Saturday Night Live, the one that you started on.
Well, I don't know whether you could do it now because of the corporate nature
that's what I'm asking.
Of network television. And maybe on cable you could do it. But everything is so homogenized now, and the fear of offending anyone is huge. So you don't have any leeway at all when you're doing something like that. And it's just everything. It's like going to airports. You don't know what city you're in, because every airport looks the same and it smells the same. And it has...
Not just the airports. When you go into the cities
Well, yeah. So everything's homogenized. So you don't get any any taste of anything else, you know, and sometimes offending somebody is not a bad thing. It makes you think.
Yeah. Was it fun, tough, hard doing those early years on Saturday night?
The 90 minutes of the show was the most exciting thing I have ever done in my life next to whitewater rafting. Oh. It was truly the biggest adrenaline rush in the world. The rest of the time was hard because it was condoning self-indulgent behavior, bad behavior. It was, you know, but that came out of the 70s and, you know, just the culture that was happening at the time. But there was no discipline, and it could have been probably a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe the lack of discipline was what made it what it was and made the humor so edgy. I don't know, but it was difficult for me, coming from my background, to be in a place that was just so undisciplined, because I like to know where I'm going to be, and I like to know what the rules are. And
so how did you stay you and not get swept away by all of the rest of it? Do you know what it was in you?
It was partially because I was married. I had just gotten married before I got the job. So I had a life and a husband who was extremely supportive in a very difficult period. And so I wasn't searching for anything. I was also pretty satisfied with having a job. I was happy to be working. And my goal was, once I got into this business, was I just want to keep working. I want to be able to support myself doing something that I love. And I had an agent. And I had a lawyer that I didn't really talk to very often because I only signed one contract. But my agent was, you know, pretty low key. But everybody else had managers, and they had publicists, and they had people telling them what they should be doing. You know, you really should be doing movies. You really should be doing plays. You really should be doing your one-person show. You should have an album. And I didn't have those ambitions myself. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to keep my job, do a good job, and when that job ends, hopefully get another job. And that was the way I saw my life. And that made it easier for me, I think.
When do you think you realized the success the show was having?
Well, see, I never accepted it. I always thought it was a ruse. Well, because even before we were on the air, you know, we were told that we were big stars, and this is the biggest show that's ever happened. And I think, yeah, let's wait until we get on the air. Let's see what happens. And maybe after about the third year, I realized that this was a phenomenon, but I didn't want to put myself in that place. I didn't want to go there because I still had to go to the dry cleaners. I still had to walk the dog.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put myself above those chores, and you're sort of catapulted into a position where you don't want to do those things because I'm a star.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
I have people, I have minions who do that for me. So.
When it came to an end, your time at Saturday Night Live, you stayed basically in television.
Yeah.
Was that a conscious choice?
Yeah, very much so.
Why?
Well, I love television.
Yeah.
I love working in a studio. It's a nice, safe place. You're surrounded by people who know what they're doing. You know, you've got these union guys who are watching your back all the time, and they laugh at your jokes. And you walk into this place, and it's a giant playpen where you're safe, and you're safe to be creative, and the hours are good. You know, especially when you're doing a half hour. When I was doing Kate and Allie, my daughter was, when I started the show, she was, I think, 13 months old. So, and because we shot it on tape, our hours were ridiculous. We'd come in at 11 and leave at 3. And, you know, when we did the show, we'd come in at noon and we'd be home at 8.
Yeah.
So it was just, it fit my life perfectly.
Were you ever worried when you left Saturday Night Live here's such a show, it's so controversial and all that you would be, because what fascinates me about your career is the fact that you went into primetime television, into people's homes, which they always tell you, there's a certain character that people will invite in. And coming out of a group that had, if you'd gone to film, you could be more outrageous and all that. You're coming from Saturday Night Live, but you made that transition right into
don't forget,
America.
If I had gone into film, I would have had keen competition. And I'm not extremely competitive. If I see that there are people competing for a part, I'll just sort of back away and go home. I can't do that well.
Yeah.
And in television, another thing about television was that I wanted, being on Saturday Night Live, you were threatening to people. They didn't know how to respond to you. You would go into restaurants and people would visibly shake in your presence, and you hadn't done anything. And so I wanted to get rid of that threatening aspect of what I did for a living. And Kate and Allie, the character, was so non-threatening, and she was fun, but she was somebody that people could relate to. People look at her as their daughter or as their sister or something that was relatable. It wasn't threatening, and I didn't want to be threatening anymore. Because it's not a good place to be.
But you can want that, but to get the country to go along with you and accept you at that is so. I think that's wonderful that you.
Well, you hope for the best, but you have no control over that. So, if it didn't happen, then I would have moved on to do something else.
Did it mean something to you winning the Emmys?
Oh yeah.
Was it something you wanted?
I didn't really think about. Again, that's competition. I didn't really think about that part of the business because I was nominated a lot for Saturday Night Live, and that was nice, but I never expected to win one. And when I won on Kate and Allie, I didn't quite know how to respond to it. And then, of course, you think your life's going to change. It's going to change dramatically. I'm going to be a different person, and, people are going to be flocking to my door with scripts, and nothing happens. You just walk around in the evening with this really heavy weapon in your hand, and nothing changes. And yet the buildup is so huge, but nothing. Yeah. So it's an odd thing. But, it's...
And then you won it the next year again.
Yeah.
Carried it around for another night.
Well, no, I couldn't go the next year because we were shooting and we were in Connecticut and they were in L.A. and I just couldn't get there. So. Yeah.
Well, eventually, Kate and Allie comes to an end.
Yeah.
And then there's Third Rock, which puts you in a very unique group of people who have had 2 hugely successful television series in a row.
Yeah.
What was the joy of Third Rock?
Oh, God,
you were only supposed to be
wasn't the joy of Third Rock.
6 episodes, 8 episodes?
I was, when Bonnie Turner, who had written The Coneheads, the movie, she and her husband, I was doing a little TV movie in Virginia. I was playing Mary Todd Lincoln, and every inch of my body had an accessory on it. I had bows, I had ribbons, I had curls all over my head. It was just amazing. And so Bonnie called me one night, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Actually, I'm working out in my room, and I don't have weights, so I'm using 2 full bottles of wine doing my exercises in the room." And she said, and I heard she had done this pilot. And I said, "How'd the pilot go?" And she said, "Well, it worked really well, except for one little problem. We underwrote a character." And I said, "Oh, well, how do you fix that?" And she said, "Well, we have to recast." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "So what are you doing in January?" And I said, "Nothing." And she said, "Would you ever do this part?" And I said, I can't really commit to doing a series in L.A. because we live someplace else." And she said, "You wouldn't have to commit. How many do you want to do?" And I'd say, 7. And she said, "Okay, 7 it is." So I said, "Okay." So I go out there and we shoot the pilot, or the scenes that they had yet to shoot. It was so much fun. Oh, was it fun. And they had added another character, Nina, the secretary, Cindy Colley. And so Simbi and I were the new kids, and everybody was just so welcoming, and it was so much fun. And then they picked up the show, and I went out and I started doing them, and I realized I only have 2 left. I don't want anybody else to do this part. I don't want anybody else to come in here. So I said to Bonnie, can I stay? And she said, sure. So I ended up staying.
Was it hard for you to ask to stay? Was that uncomfortable?
No.
No?
No, it wasn't. No, it was too much fun. It was so unbelievably fun to do that show. It was just the silliest thing in the world.
Have we lost our sense of silliness as a country, do you think?
Yeah, I do think so.
How do we get that back?
We've gotten too mean. You know, and there's a point at which you have to be pointed, but there's also a time when you've just got to be flat out dumb silly. And I think there have been a lot of silly movies, but they haven't been silly enough. You know, it's sort of flatulent silly. That's not. You know, it's got to have a little more substance to it than that.
Right.
You know, it's got to be a little smarter, and then you go for the silly. Because God, it's so much fun to do.
Yeah. In a whole different side of your life, though, you do some very serious work, and that's with UNICEF.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how did you decide that was where you wanted to put your efforts?
Well, I traveled a lot as a kid. My father was in the insurance business, but he was really a gypsy at heart. And so he would work very hard 9 months out of the year. And then 3 months out of the year, we'd go on a cruise. And this was back in the 50s and early 60s when they had these small ships. People didn't fly a lot back then, you know, especially diplomats and their families when they were going to assignments. And so they would take these ships, and we would get on at the New York, and we would stay on the ship for 2 months. And other families would get on and off, and we'd just travel all over the world. It was fabulous. And I saw a lot as a kid, and I saw just how difficult it was for other kids in the world who weren't lucky enough to be born in the United States. And I also saw UNICEF people. You know, you'd see UNICEF people out in the bazaars, and you'd see them on the streets, and you'd see UNICEF trucks and stuff like that. And so I was aware of it when I was little. And then I would trick-or-treat for UNICEF in my schools and stuff like that. And then I got a phone call one day just asking if I would be interested in working on their Trick-or-Treat for UNICEF campaign. And I said, yeah, sure. I know what you're talking about. So I started, and that was 30 years ago, so that was a long time.
Did you have any idea that it would become this much work, that there'd be these many things you'd be involved with from that?
I was hoping.
Really?
I was hoping, yeah. Because if you're going to do something, you want to do it. You don't want to, just say. It was sort of like back in the early 70s, there was the debutante of the year. I'm not going to name any names. But there was an interview with her in some magazine, and she was saying, now that you are debutante of the year, what are you going to do with your life? And she said, well, I want a disease. And I don't really want it to be a gross disease, but I want to have, like, my disease that I'm going to work for. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah. So I didn't want it to be my disease, but I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do something that I could commit myself to. And UNICEF is a very comfortable pair of shoes to put on. It's necessary. It's effective. The people who work within the organization are terrific. I've met so many neat people through UNICEF. And there's a constant need for it, especially now that the world is so carbonated. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just getting worse and worse and worse for children.
When we talk about UNICEF, a lot of people are familiar with the name, and they know, they work with children around, but aren't exactly sure what exactly UNICEF does. Can you address that?
The goal of UNICEF is to really help children survive at least to the age of 5. I mean, that was their original mandate, to make sure that children had access to clean drinking water, that they had access to the basic health care that you could possibly give to them. And this all came out of the end of the war. And since then, it has branched out, and they're doing a tremendous amount with HIV/AIDS, trying to make sure that the retrovirus medication is accessible. They do a tremendous amount with education, especially women, because it's been proven that if the women are educated, they will have fewer children, the children will be healthier, and the economy will improve. I was in El Salvador right after the war, and we went to this village up in the mountains, and there was a little commune of these incredibly ambitious women, and they all had cottage industries, crafts that they made, and they were determined. They were just determined that they were going to do something through the help of the NGOs that UNICEF had arranged, and they were going to sell these things, and they were going to lift up their community. And they can't do that unless they have some information, and it's important just to get some education out there for women especially. And they are the ones that take care of the children. So if they have the basic education to take care of their children will have a better chance of survival. I mean, it's very simple stuff that UNICEF does. It's very simple.
Isn't it surprising? It's so simple, yet it's so needed.
It's incredibly surprising, but you also see the difficulty when you go in with these great ideas and you go into a culture and you have to work within the structure of that culture, which takes a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of patience. I mean, I watch these people who do this for a living, and I think, my God, how do they do it? How do they put up with that crap? I mean, you just want to say, just get a broom. Just get a broom. Clean it. It will be done. Don't have the meetings. Just get a broom. But that's not the way it's done.
See, maybe that's why you were in television, to learn that kind of patience.
I don't have that kind of patience. I wish I did, but I don't, yeah.
Does it still surprise you what you find when you go out and look at the world?
No.
You've seen it all, pretty much?
I haven't seen it all, and I hope I never do. But I've seen enough to know how cruel we are as a race, and how, corrupted we are by power, by just holding on to something that means nothing, something that's so ephemeral. Whereas if you look around and you see your citizens they're not, there's no water, there's no food, there's graft everywhere. When you have these loads of food being delivered, gangs of people are taking them and selling them. And it's so frustrating and difficult. And yet these people go out every day to fight the good fight, and I just admire them so much.
So how do you stay involved? How do you get to the point that you're not so frustrated you give up? And
well, because I'm a fundraiser. It's easy what I do. I'm not out there in the field. I'm not trying to make points with some local pasha.
Yeah.
I'm just out there trying to raise money so that these people can continue. And that's the easy part. That's the easy part. It's, all right, I do have to find something to wear. And that's
the hard stuff.
But, the rest of the stuff, the people out in the field are just amazing.
Yeah. When you go back home and you look at the pile of, I'm assuming, scripts that come in.
Oh, yeah.
How do you pick what you do? I heard that you just you don't go looking for it. If something good comes to you and you're interested.
I wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I wouldn't know what to look for. What do you look for? I don't know. I'm 58 years old. What do I want to be? I don't know what I want to be. Surprise me.
So if you could plan what that next phone call would be offering you, what do you think you would like to try?
I have no idea. I've done just about everything.
Yeah.
I even performed in Vegas with a cone on my head, which to me was the lowest point in my career. But I thought, well, Vegas is done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done just about everything there is. I don't know.
Yeah. Are you up for another network series?
No, not at this point, no.
Really?
Well, I just had another one crash and burn, so no one's sort of stomping at my door.
Can you tell what's going to work and what's not at this point?
No. The climate is so different now. It's so different than even 7 years ago with Third Rock. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And it's art by committee, and it's does it have to be a cup of coffee? Those kinds of it's you go into studios now, and I found this out in LA, and I didn't find it to be a safe place, which was shocking to me, because all of those concrete blocks are supposed to be a place where you go in and you feel safe. I didn't feel safe. So I think the climate has maybe moved beyond my ken.
Yeah. Well, we can say no more, but thank you for taking the time to sit down
and
talk
with us.
A pleasure. Jane Curtin.
To order a transcript, call 866-652-3378 or send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.